If you are tired of feeling overwhelmed by life, as though you're at the effect rather than at the cause of life, if you ever feel like you're falling behind, you just can't catch up, you're missing something, then I have really good news for you because today what I'm going to share with you can change that for you. I'm going to share with you one of the biggest mistakes that people make that prevents them from actually achieving the results that they truly want, so that this blocks them from really living that fulfillment. Instead, they just go on struggling with the old anxiety, the old frustration, the old despair. It's because of this one mistake, and I'm going to share with you what that one mistake is, and I'm going to lay out for you a very simple and yet extraordinarily powerful plan that when you work with it can really, truly, honestly transform your life. Now, notice that I said, when you work with it. So I want to set the proper expectations. I mean, if you think that you're going to come here and you're going to hear this once and that this is going to instantaneously transform everything for you from here on out, it could happen because anything is possible, but it's unlikely. And many people will think that that's how it's supposed to work. And so they'll just keep searching and searching and searching and searching. And there'll come a point, and perhaps this point has come for you, where you realize the pain of the ongoing seeking is too much. You don't want to keep doing that. And then when that occurs, then you're ready to actually begin to really see real positive change in your life because you're willing to accept responsibility. So for anybody who is willing to accept that responsibility, I promise you, I give you my word that when you actually work with what I share with you today, this will change your life. Or more correctly, you will change your life because you will end the ignorance that has been causing your suffering. You will begin the new dawning of awareness in your life, which can enhance every area of your life. It can work miracles in every area of your life. This is true at a material level, and this is also true at a spiritual level. You see, when you work with these principles that I'm going to share with you, you can enhance the quality of your material life. So if you struggle with financial issues, you can work with this knowledge in order to end that struggle with finances so that you can begin to actually live abundance. If you struggle with relationship issues, if you're seeking for love, or if you're constantly seeking for approval from others, or if you're otherwise experiencing pain in relationship or disappointment in relationship, when you work with these principles, you can transform that into a life in which you experience the the inner abundance of right relationship, where you can experience love, harmony, peace, contentment, fulfillment. All of that's possible when you work with these principles. Same is true of health. Same is also true if what is of most importance to you is your spiritual well-being. If you are somebody who really, you just say, look, what most matters to me is true unconditional peace. When you work with these principles, that can become enlivened in your life. You can actually know and live that. Okay, so that's all possible for you, again, when you work sincerely and consistently with these. So this is not something that you're just going to hear once. This is something that I really encourage you to come back to over and over again, because the more that you work with this, the more depth of insight you will receive, the more clarity. So it's really, really important that you have the proper expectations. So first, I said that I'm going to share with you this number one mistake, or a very significant mistake that I see people making time and time again, which prevents them from having the real success in their life. And this big mistake that people make is that they are working, or rather they are focused on the techniques rather than principles. So just notice what happens if you're focused on techniques rather than principles. It's like the difference between giving a man a fish and teaching a man to fish. Because notice, if you give a man a fish, he eats for one day, but if you teach a man to fish, he can eat for a lifetime. And so it is the difference between working with techniques versus working with principles. Now, I'm not saying that techniques have no value. They do. However, if you are focused primarily on the techniques without actually having the understanding, the depth of understanding that the principles can give you, then you are going to go on seeking, just as I described earlier, because you'll use one technique and sometimes it might seem to give you some results and sometimes it doesn't. And maybe you'll hit a dry spell and you say, oh, the technique has stopped working. What do I do? And you go on to the next YouTube video, the next book, the next workshop, and whatever else in search of the next technique. So when I'm talking about techniques, I'm talking about, you know what they are, right? I mean, you know that you've tried these things. You've tried the EFT. You've tried the affirmations. You've tried the scripting. You've tried the specific visualization techniques. You've tried all of, the guided meditations and all the rest of it. And all of those things, again, they may have value, but if you don't understand the principles, if you're just focused on the techniques, then you are really robbing yourself of your real wealth, because you'll just go on giving your power away to things outside of you, to people outside of you, to techniques outside of you, imagining that that's where your salvation lies. So it's to work with the principles, to focus on the principles will ground you in your fundamental empowerment. And this allows you then to actually be independent of the techniques. So you're free to make use of the techniques to the degree that they are supportive and helpful for you, to the degree to which they will facilitate more rapid positive changes in alignment with what you want. However, when you understand the principles, you are no longer reliant upon the techniques because the principles do all of the heavy lifting. So understanding principles is really where it's at, and most people fail to recognize this. So today, as I said, I was not only going to share with you this number one mistake, but also I want to lay out a plan. It's a very simple, yet very profound plan. It has three parts. I'm going to share with you three principles. And I'm going to give you an introduction to each of these principles in a way that you can begin to work with them. And as I said earlier, when you persist in actually working with these, that's when the magic happens. So I just want to be clear about having the proper expectations. If you think that you're just going to sit here and listen to it, and that's going to somehow magically change everything, you might be setting yourself up for disappointment. However, if you have the attitude of wanting to actually be able to understand what it is that's being pointed to so that you can then commit to working with this in your own life day after day after day so that it can enrich your life, then you will be richly rewarded. So the first principle is the principle of oneness. Now, this is a principle that is often overlooked, and yet it is the most important principle of all. If you want to manifest a life that is meaningful, that is fulfilling, that gives you real, true satisfaction, I cannot overstate the importance of working with this principle, because anything else that you do in the absence of this principle will fail. That's how important this principle is. You must work with this principle if you want to have real success. Ultimately, everything else finally leads to this principle. So you have an option. You could start somewhere else and eventually be led to the principle of oneness, or you could start with the principle of oneness from the outset. It will be I believe, it will give you faster, better results. So that's why I'm leading with this principle, because it's really the core, the heart of the whole thing. So the principle of oneness is really, can be summed up by the law, which is that everything is one. There is only one reality, just one reality. Now, this is something that you will understand this or not understand this presently based on your present level of consciousness. As you work with this principle, contemplating this sincerely, opening to new depths of understanding, new insights regarding this, consistently day after day, your level of consciousness will change. So please understand the importance of that. You experience life through the filter of the level of consciousness from which you are presently operating. Whatever it is that you hold in consciousness determines what you experience. It is not the other way around. Okay. A lot of times people have this misunderstanding, and they think that the external determines the internal, but that's just plain wrong. So it is what it is that you hold in consciousness that determines your experience. And so if your level of consciousness is one of division, separation, multiplicity, then you will perceive and experience from that level of consciousness. And notice that if there is separation, or if there is a perception of separation, if that's what you are holding in consciousness to be true, then what that sets up is that there is separation in your perception of reality. And therefore, you will perceive yourself to be threatened. Because if you are separate, then there is always going to be the danger of harm. There will also be a sense of lack, because if there is separation, then there is inherent in that lack. And so there will be a sense of, I am missing something, I need something. Where will that something be found? Well, clearly it will be found outside of me. So you will be out of center, you will be grasping for things, and you will fall down over and over and over and over and get hurt and disappointed, frustrated, discouraged. You'll grow angry, resentful, and ultimately cynical, because like the Aesop's fable of the fox and the grapes, the fox sees the grapes up there dangling from the vine and thinks, oh, those look delicious, and he tries to get them, but every which way he tries, he leaps this way, he leaps that way, he can't quite reach them. And so he gives up, and he determines, well, they must have been sour grapes anyway. And this is what happens to people when they're starting from the frame that there is separation. Then ultimately this will end up in cynicism, because the people will determine, well, it's just the way things are. I'm just lacking. I'm incomplete. Life is fundamentally lacking and incomplete. Life is just suffering, and there's no way around it. And of course, this is deeply unfulfilling. And so round and round it goes, because as long as there are unfulfilled desires, then you just continue to play this game. But it becomes a very painful game when you're playing the game from a place of perceived separation. So this principle of oneness is really, it is so important that if you were to work with no other principle other than just this one, this can give you everything. Just this one, if you are to work with it sincerely. So let's just take another look at it. Now, you might have heard people say things like the importance of detachment from outcome, the importance of letting go. So people will talk about that, but often they don't explain clearly how it is possible to actually practice that. And when you study the principle of oneness, when you investigate it, when you work with it sincerely on a regular basis, this will reveal to you the truth and really ultimately the only truth of letting go and detachment. Because there's no way that you can really, truly, all the way let go or detach so long as you perceive that you are lacking. If you perceive that you are lacking, that you are incomplete, you cannot let go. You can give lip service to it, you can do your best, but it will always be there. A sense something's missing, I need it. And so it will come back over and over again, the seeking for what it is that's missing. So the remedy for that is to actually discover that you are fundamentally already whole and complete. Because that's that, if you think about it, oneness. So if there is one, if the truth is one without a second, now you can't even really properly wrap your mind around that because the mind is always based upon division. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on that today because that would take us off of point, but that is the truth. The mind is always based on division. So there is no way for the mind to actually understand oneness. But what is possible is through the working with this principle that the mind can actually be at least momentarily absorbed back into its source. See, everything emerges from one and is only ever one. Now, again, this is impossible for the mind to really wrap itself around. However, we can use something that can point that you can start to catch a glimpse of. Okay, so notice that when you dream at night, that dream contains a multiplicity. There is a sense of space and time in that dream. And there is a sense, usually, unless you are awake in the dream, there is a sense that you are a character in a dream and that the world in which that dream is occurring, the dream world, is separate from you as the character. That there are other characters appearing in that dream world that are separate from you as the dream character. So the dream seems to be a multiplicity. However, upon waking, it becomes evident that there was actually only one thing happening, and that was what we could call consciousness. The entire dream itself was never actually any separation. It was a dream occurring in consciousness, which remains forever unified. The fact that a multiplicity appeared in the dream in no way separated consciousness. Another metaphor that is sometimes used for this is the metaphor of a movie. So if you were to watch a movie in a theater and that you know that the movie is projected onto a screen, now that movie will appear as a whole world. So there will be characters, locations, activities, all kinds of things. And it appears as though there's a division taking place because there might be multiple characters in a location in space doing things. However, at no time does that projection of the movie onto the screen divide the screen. The screen remains forever unified. It's never divided. It's only ever one. Consciousness is always one. There's never a second. When you really are willing to accept this and work with this sincerely, then you can start to discover the power of this for yourself. This is not something that you're going to really be able to intellectually fully grasp, as I've already stated, because the mind cannot grasp what is beyond the mind. This is what we're talking about, is the source of the mind. So The mind is an appearance in consciousness. It cannot grasp consciousness. Consciousness is unbounded. So we could actually experience this right now, because it's always the truth. Notice that, right? I mean, if it's true that there is a unified consciousness that is one, not two, that must always be the case. It's not sometimes the case. It's not dependent on any conditions. It is always the case because it is transcendent of everything else. It's the independent reality. Everything else is dependent on it. Similar to how the screen is an independent reality that is required in order for the movie to be projected. So the screen exists independent of the movie. The movie can only appear if the screen is there. So the screen is the independent reality. The movie is dependent upon the screen. In the same way, all appearance, all of life is a dependent reality. Consciousness is the independent reality. So it is always true, meaning we can glimpse it now, always. There's never a moment in which it's not possible to glimpse it, regardless of the conditions. It doesn't matter whether you feel good or you feel bad. It doesn't matter whether you are feeling safe or unsafe. It doesn't matter whether it's night or day. It doesn't matter whether you're old or young. It doesn't matter whether you're educated or uneducated. None of these things can matter, because this is always true. So you could notice right now, and as I said, there are no conditions, so you can do it with eyes open, eyes closed, does not matter. Just notice that right now, before the next thought arises, so it might only be just a split second before the next thought, but you could just notice in this moment, before the next thought arises, what is actually here before the thought. And you can't actually say what it is. I mean, we could use a word, we could say it's consciousness, but the word is not it. So it doesn't matter what you call it, but just notice, and notice that it defies any kind of objectification, because it's not something that you can get hold of. And yet you can still nonetheless notice something. You can notice what it is not, for example. So just notice before the next thought, what's here? Is there any boundary to it? Can you find a limit? Any place where it starts or ends? And most likely you will recognize that it's not possible to find any limit to it. The very idea of a start or an end or a boundary or a limit simply makes no sense, because a limit or a boundary or a start or an end only applies to a thing that the mind can label and understand. And yet this cannot be grasped, it cannot be objectified, it can't be labeled. So you may or may not have a clear glimpse of that now. Maybe you think, I understand that. Maybe you think, I don't understand that. Maybe you think, oh, I already knew this. And maybe you think, I'll never be able to know this. And none of those things matter. Again, if you work with this sincerely, consistently, this will change your life. Because the more that you glimpse this, the more that you recognize that fundamentally, your very source, what you truly are, which is always here, is already whole and complete. Notice, if it has no boundary, if it has no limitation, then is there any possibility of it being anything other than complete? The idea of incomplete doesn't even apply. There's no way of understanding this as being incomplete or lacking, because It is absolutely uh, total. There is nothing that can ever be experienced or found that is outside of this field of consciousness. The more that you recognize this, the more you'll also recognize that this is you. Now, this is an important point that to clarify, because I'm not saying that your personality or your body encapsulates the totality of that which cannot be bound. I'm not saying you by your name that you go by, that you are God. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that who you really are is nameless, formless, limitless, not a personality, not a body. Always here, always present, eternal, complete, whole, lacking nothing, needing nothing. Now, again, the mind will come back in and it will try to make sense of it. It will say, oh, wait, now hold on a second. How do I do something with this? And it will start twisting up and it will say, I don't know, I can't make sense of it. What does this mean? How do I do something with this? But none of that is necessary, because all of the things that your mind will try to do with it will end up being wrong anyway. So there's no sense in doing that. Instead, the real value is in noticing that you really, truly are always already complete and whole. There's nothing lacking. The more you notice this, the more you will notice that it's impossible for you to need anything. Of course, your mind will still say you need things. It's the habit. Well, that's why I'm going to elaborate on the next two principles, which will help with that. But fundamentally, this principle of oneness is what's really most needed. Now, again, people will do all kinds of weird things with this. Sometimes people will think that they'll say, well, hold on a second. If I was to really fully accept that I am already whole and complete, then I would have no motivation to try and get the things that I think I want and need. And if I didn't do that, then I would end up toothless, homeless, under the bridge. You know the way that this goes, right? Well, there are basically two possibilities there. One possibility is that you're right, but you will be so absolutely perfectly content, peaceful, happy, and fulfilled, toothless, homeless, under the bridge, so you won't care. The other possibility is that you will, from that wholeness and completeness, some other authentic expression will emerge that will look different than toothless, homeless, under the bridge. That may still look like having the $1 million home, or the modest home, or whatever it is. So it's just a distortion of the mind that tries to assign a particular meaning to that and say that if I was to know myself and recognize myself as already whole and complete, then I would end up toothless, homeless, under the bridge. It's just not true. So what is true, though, for sure, is that when you thoroughly recognize that you are already whole and complete, when that is known through and through, beyond a doubt, you are so content, so fulfilled, so happy. You have tasted, you are living real success for the first time in your life. I mean, just notice that. Notice if you're able to catch a glimpse, even just for a split second, of what it is that's being pointed to here about the fundamental wholeness that is already the truth at the heart of being, which you are. If you catch just the smallest fraction of the glimpse of this, notice in that glimpse, isn't it true that that is the real true success that you have been seeking for and that you have never found elsewhere? Never. You cannot find it elsewhere because everywhere else you look for it, it will be contaminated by anxiety because everything else is conditional. If you say, I my okayness, my happiness, my contentment, my peace, my success is dependent upon me having the external money, me having the external validation, me having the external approval. If it's dependent upon those things, there's anxiety at the heart of that because you know I have to hold on to these things and I can't. And it's no fault of yours. That's just how life works. And you can argue with that. You're welcome to do it if you want, but I suggest you don't because it will only be painful. I mean, it's sort of like I know people do this, you know, they say, well, you know, it, sh it should be my way. You know, if I'm really the true creator of my experience, then it should all be my way. But you see, this is what I call mixing levels, because if you recognize the truth of oneness that's being pointed to here, then you can recognize that that is the creator of reality. That is the real creator of reality, of the whole reality. That. And you are that. But when you mix levels, you think, this person here, this personality, this body, this character, I am the creator of reality with capital R. And there you're mistaken. You are endowed with those same creative functions, but within a particular limited scope. And if you mix levels, you will be very disappointed and frustrated. But when you acknowledge the truth that you are already that, when you are already whole and complete, then you can recognize what you've been so desperately seeking for your whole life is already here. It's already available. You don't need to go anywhere for it. There are no conditions that need to be met. You don't need to have the money. You don't need to have the approval. You don't need to have the six-pack abs. You don't need to have the PhD or the other things. None of that is required. It's already here. So I could go on and on about that, but I'll now talk about second principle. So second principle is principle of intention. Now, a moment ago, I suggested to you that you have in no other way in your life ever experienced true success other than in the glimpse of your true nature as already whole and complete. And if you think about it, that's what we're really looking for is that true success, but we're looking for it usually in all the wrong places. We're looking for it where it's not going to be found, as I've already pointed out. But now when we look at it through the filter of the principle of intention, we can see this in a more refined way and how important this is. Because think about this. A lot of the time people, they want to be successful. I mean, is there anybody here who does not want to be successful? Everybody wants to be successful, but they make a big mistake, which is they don't actually know what that means. So they have a thought, an idea that appears to them that suggests to them, this might be success, right? It says, if you have the money, then you'll be successful. If you get married, then you'll be successful. If you get that career, then you'll be successful. If you get the house, then you'll be successful, right? There's always something that then you're often seeking for that thing because you think then I'll be successful when I get that thing. But notice what happens. If you ever achieve any of those things that you set out to achieve, if you really got the true success that you were actually after, you'd stop right there. Because that would be the end. You know, you'd say, that was what I was going for. I got it. Done. But you don't do that, do you? You get the thing and then you say, I guess that wasn't quite it. So you're off seeking after the next thing. what this points to is that you didn't actually know what true success was. Now, it's not your fault because the world really does not teach us to actually question what is real success. I mean, the world is very happy to present us with lots of things because it's easy to sell that. I mean, it's really easy to sell. Here's, do this thing and then you'll be successful. Get the $1 million and I'll show you how. And then you can be successful. That's easy to sell, but it's not actually truthful. So just notice how much of your life you have been playing that game where you've been chasing after this thing and then that thing and then that thing, believing, at least in the back of your mind, that those were going to be your salvation. That then finally you could be successful, content, free, fulfilled. But it never worked out. So don't you think it's about time that you got clear on what real success is? I would say it is. I'm proposing that. I think there's a real value in that. And so this comes to this principle of intention. See, you're always working with intention. Intention is whatever it is that you are wanting or believing that you want. But most of the time that intention is unconscious, and therefore you get an unconscious life. And the chances of an unconscious life being truly satisfying are very, very small. So it's up to you to make that conscious. Now, I want to again be clear. This principle of oneness is the most foundational. If you worked with only that, that would give you everything. However, realistically, most people are not going to completely get that one taken care of and sorted out today. And so there are other things that are going on in your life that can be really useful to have some additional principles to work with. So what I'm suggesting, the principle of intention, and then the next principle, which I'll share with you, are meant to be complementary to the principle of oneness, but not a substitute. So work with these in complement to the principle of oneness. Now, when it comes to this principle of intention, getting clear, you've heard me say this before, I imagine, getting clear on what you want is of tremendous importance. And yet, so few people do it. So I talk frequently about what I call borrowed desires. And most of the desires that you have, or you think you have at least, are borrowed desires. These are not your actual desires. These are desires that you borrowed, that you picked up along the way from your parents, from your teachers, from your friends, from the TV, from Facebook, etc. Now, think about this. Imagine that you are really, really, really hungry, starving. You're so hungry. And somebody comes along and they say, you know what will give you real satisfaction is traveling to every country of the world. And you're like, yeah, I guess maybe that will do it for me. So you go to the travel agent and you get the whole itinerary. So you're going to go to every country of the world, in a whirlwind tour in 1 year. 365 days later, you've completed the whole tour. How satisfied are you? You're not satisfied at all. You're now even more hungry because you totally missed the point. You can't satisfy that hunger by traveling the world. You can't satisfy that hunger by getting married. You can't satisfy that hunger by having the $1 million. None of those things are going to give you what you really want because you're looking in the wrong direction. This is why you need to have clarity of intention. If you don't know what you want, you're going to be doing stuff, but it's all going to be in the wrong direction. The chances of you somehow satisfying your true desire just by happenstance is virtually zero. I mean, like I often say, anything is possible, but it's like so close to zero, it is zero. So it is really important that you get clear on what you want. And still, I'm amazed at how often people refuse to do this. So you have a choice. You could not do this and then still, just keep your fingers crossed or whatever your little ritual is. But isn't it time to admit that that's not working? On the other hand, you could just develop a very small daily habit. So simple. And as long as you apply yourself to this sincerely, consistently, then things will start to change. You'll get more clear on what you want. Because again, if you have these fundamental desires that are actually yours, and you are living your life trying and seeking to fulfill all of the borrowed desires, then you get to that last breath of this lifetime, and it will all have been for nothing. I mean, you will have been very busy. You will have had lots of ups and downs, heartaches and loss, and all of the rest of it. But at the end, it will have been for nothing. And I know that sounds like kind of dramatic, and it should seem shocking, but it should shock you awake. Don't squander your life chasing after borrowed desires. It's what most people are doing, and that's just a waste. Get clear on what you want. The more, because, okay, think about this. So to tie this also to the principle of oneness, let's say that you accept my invitation to work with this principle of oneness, to investigate every single day. Just take a moment every day just to notice what's here before the next thought. And just to notice, is there any boundary between you and that? As you investigate that day after day, you will discover every single time there's no boundary. There's no boundary at all. No boundary between me and that. No boundary in any way whatsoever that can be discovered. Therefore, there is only oneness. There's not me and oneness. There's only oneness. That's all there is. Now, let's assume that you take me up on that offer, that invitation, and you explore that day after day. But notice what's likely to happen. If you are afraid because you think, well, I have this doubt. Okay, I'm pretty sure I get it. I've repeatedly investigated. I've discovered this. It seems very true, but there's a doubt in the back of your mind because of what? Because of unresolved desire, because you're still thinking, yeah, but maybe, I mean, maybe there's no boundary. Maybe there's only wholeness and completeness, but maybe I need the $1,000,000. It's not necessarily rational, but if that's there, then there's going to be pain. There's going to be fear that's going to be operating in your life. It's going to pull you away from oneness. I mean, not in truth, but it's going to pull your attention away from that, which is going to keep you in this limbo until you resolve that for yourself. This is the value of getting clear on what you want so that you can resolve that for yourself. That will allow you then to finally put it to rest so that you're not seeking for something else. Then you can finally just give yourself that gift of knowing and being and living from your wholeness. So that's intention. Next is the principle of attention. So I'm sure you've heard me talk about this law, the law of attention. Whatever you put your attention on, that's where the energy goes. So you experience whatever you put your attention on persistently. So if your attention is going to thoughts of lack, beliefs of lack, imagination of lack, then what do you experience? You experience lack. If your thoughts and are constantly of worthlessness, what do you experience? Worthlessness, because that's where you're putting your attention. So the power of attention is very, very, very important in the process of manifestation. It is how the energy is directed. If you don't like what you're experiencing, then you need to work with this power consciously because it's already happening unconsciously. You're the creator of your experience. You're creating your experience already utilizing these principles. You just don't know it. So you are already using attention in order to create your experience largely unconsciously. And again, if you don't like it, it's up to you to change that. Nobody else can do that for you. So become aware of where your attention is going. And this is very much connected with the principle of intention, because when you have clarity of intention, suddenly you can start, it gives you some, like an anchor. Now you know what matters to you. What do you want? And anytime that your attention is somewhere else, you can recognize that. You can realize, gee whiz, now that I know that what I want more than anything else is peace, then you just start to notice where your attention is going to everything other than peace. You just notice, oh, fear over here, fear over there, anger, fear, anger, fear, anger, fear, anger, fear. It's all anger and fear, maybe a little sadness thrown in the mix. And then, it's like, what do you want? Peace, but your attention goes everywhere else. Is it any wonder why you have the experience that you have? So this is a really important power to work with. So how can you work with that? Well, again, all three of these principles can have overlap and synergy. So let me just, in summary, go over that so that that's clear. So if you're going to work, so the power of attention is what determines what you experience or what you perceive, because wherever your attention goes, that's where the energy goes. So, but you can't really work with the power of attention very clearly until you know what your intention is, until you know what you want. Because only when you know what you want, are you, as I already described, are you going to be able to recognize whether your attention is on that or not? Otherwise, you're confused. You don't know where you want your attention, so it's all fair game. If your attention goes here or goes there, you don't know the difference until you know what you want. When you know what you want, suddenly it's crystal clear. It's just there's no gray area whatsoever. If you know you want peace, it's either your attention is on peace or it's not. And that's a life-changing thing right there. So those two go together. And then the principle of oneness is what allows everything to work. It's, again, that screen on which the movie is projected. It's the consciousness in which all of this is appearing. And it is fundamentally whole and complete, and you are that. So this should inform your intention, because when you recognize that, then here's a clue. What you really want is that. I mean, like, think about it. If you understand that what you most want, the only thing that's going to give you the true satisfaction is what you already are, which is whole and complete, which is eternal, which is always here, which is never not here, that should very clearly inform your intention of what you want. And then you can work with the power of attention in order to just direct that at what you want. But you can use these principles in order to create anything and everything. So it's up to you. I mean, it really depends on where you're at and what you want to do. So if you decide that what you want most of all is the, $6.3 billion and the Maserati, the fleet of Maseratis at that point, I guess, then and the garage to park them all in, and the team of mechanics to maintenance them all. Then if that's really what you decide you want, you can still use these principles so that you can much more effectively create that for yourself. Um, because if you think about it, if you don't understand these and you're not working with these principles, you're going to be working against yourself. It doesn't matter what techniques you use. You can use, the 369 technique, or you can use the 864 technique, or you can use the whatever technique. You can stand on your head while you're holding your breath, and you can do all the things. You can move the energy here and there, but none of those things are actually going to give you consistent results, and certainly not satisfying results, until you understand these principles. Then, as I said earlier, when you understand these principles, you don't need the techniques, because honestly, those techniques, again, they're not inherently bad. It's okay to utilize them, but you don't want to be dependent upon them. And you don't really need to use them when you understand these principles, because the principles give you the underlying understanding of how things are actually working. So you can work at that lower level, get more efficiency, instead of working at the higher level with techniques which are going to be hit or miss. Um, I hope that that's reasonably clear to you. Uh, Let me just say a few more things. So first, I'm gonna mention how you can get more information about this for free. Second, I'm gonna again recap and give you some simple, specific steps that you can take on a daily basis so that you can work with these. So first of all, if you have not already gotten the free ebook that I offer on my website, or if you've gotten it but you haven't read it, then I encourage you to do so, because that book, How to Be the Creator of Your Reality, is covers 5 of these fundamental laws that govern creation. So it does cover 3 of the laws that I talked about today, plus 2 more, and in more detail than I've discussed today. And so it's a really important, valuable read that I recommend everybody to go through. If you haven't gotten it already, then you can get that at my website at joeylott.com. And if you've already gotten it and you haven't read it, just read it, because it will really help you. Now, as to some simple things that you can do in order to work with these principles on a regular basis. So here's what I recommend. Every day, take at least just a second to just pause and notice before the next thought. What is the nature of what's actually here? Before the next thought. So before you can think about it, just notice what's actually here. No, and in particular, notice, is there any boundary? And is there any boundary between it and you? Only takes a second. If you do that consistently, this will change your life. If you do it once, it could change your life. It will change your life, but how significant of a change? Probably not that significant. But if you work with it consistently, I can guarantee that it will change your life, because it's going to be shifting your self-knowledge. You're going to actually realize with greater and greater clarity who you are. This will remove so much fear, because if you notice, all the fear is connected to what? To your idea of you. You're afraid of losing things because you're afraid of what that's going to mean to you. You're afraid of all of these things, but all of them hinge on an idea of yourself, and that idea of yourself, pay attention to this, it is something that is transient. It's not eternal. So as you recognize day after day after day, just having a glimpse, recognizing that who you actually are is eternal. It's not dependent on any of those things. It's not dependent on the body. It's not dependent on the mind. It's not dependent on the personality. It's not dependent on money. It's not dependent on approval. It's not dependent on recognition. It's not dependent on achievement. None of those things. It's independent. It's totally transcendent. So that's number one thing. And it only takes a second a day. So when will you do that every day? Just figure that out now and make a commitment. Just 1 second. Will it be like first thing on waking, last thing before going to sleep, before eating lunch? Just pick a time, commit to it, follow through. In terms of the principle of intention, take a moment every day. Again, it doesn't have to be long, maybe just a minute. If even less, if you're not willing to commit, a minute, and just contemplate what is it that you really want. Write it down. If you do that every day, you will get clearer and clearer and clearer and clearer. At first, you might say, I don't know, it seems like it's confusing. There's so many things I want. How do I know what I really want? How do I know what's borrowed desire? But that's why I say do it every day. If you just do it every day, it will get clearer and clearer and clearer. Why? Because of the third principle of attention. Whatever you put your attention on grows. So if you keep putting your attention consistently on what do I want, that will get clearer. Then for the third principle of attention, just notice throughout the day where your attention is going. You don't need to judge that. You don't need to condemn yourself, but just notice in light of what it is that you want, relative to that, where is your attention going? Is it going to what you want, or is it going somewhere else? And the more that you can just notice that, the more that naturally your attention will tend to go to what you want, because you'll recognize that it's foolish to keep giving your attention to what you don't want. Of course, the habit is there. The habit is, oh, I'm afraid. I have all these things I need to be afraid of. Therefore, I have to give attention to that fear. I have to solve these problems. But when you start to realize that you do that day in and day out, and it doesn't solve any of the problems, and it doesn't keep any of the things that you're afraid of away, then you realize, well, gee, that's just stupid. I mean, isn't it? I mean, if you really tell the truth, it's just stupid. And I'm not saying you're stupid. I'm just saying that particular pattern it's a stupid pattern. And I do it too. Everybody does it. But you can just recognize it. And the more you recognize it, the less you're likely to do it, because you can recognize it's stupid and painful. It's self-harm. So the more awareness you have of it, the more it's going to fall away, because it's just like, okay, that does nothing for me and it hurts me. Therefore, I guess I'll just more and more give my attention to what I want. So if you just do those three things, I promise you, I give you my word that your life will change for the better, and it will continue to do so. You will have more and more clarity. You will experience more calm, more peace. I'm not saying that overnight everything is going to be rainbows and roses and you're just going to feel good from here on out. I'm saying that your life will get better and better and better and better and better. Even if it's just 1%, even if it's just 0.1%, even if it's even 0.01% every day. You might say, oh, that's nothing, that doesn't count for anything, but it does over time. If you do that consistently, day after day after day after day, even the tiniest amount of improvement adds up very significantly, very significantly. A year from now, if you do what I've suggested, write it down, make a note now, put the date now, and then every day make a little note to yourself whether you did these things or not. And I promise you, if you do this a year from now, you will look back and you will be amazed at the changes that have taken place. It will be a night and day difference, because it will be like the all of the previous years of your life where it was like there's a line, a demarcation. There's before today and after today. All of the years of your life up to now will have been that bygone era, the era of self-inflicted pain and ignorance. And from this moment forward will be the new dawning of the new era, in which your life gets better and better. And you will look back and you will see the truth of that. You will look back and you will realize that today is the day in which you started to actually be awake to the truth of yourself, and that everything started to change from this moment forward, only if you actually follow through. And I promise you, if you just these three things, it doesn't require hardly any amount of time. It will save you so much time, because so much of your time is being just take a look at this and notice the truth of this. So much of your time is eaten away by the anxiety, the fear, the doubt, the worry, the anger, the resentment, the blame, the shame, the guilt, and all the rest of it. Isn't that the truth? I mean, if you were to make a journal and calculate all the time that is sucked up by all that kind of stuff, you would be shocked. And it doesn't have to be that way. If you would just apply what I've shared with you today, your life can change so that a year from now, at least half of all of that old way will have disappeared. At least half of the self-harm will have disappeared. At least half. And you might say, well, that's not good enough. And if you have that attitude, then you'll keep doing the same old thing that you've done up to now, which is just to seek and seek and seek instead of actually applying. But if you apply, then you will get the results and you will be very happy for that. So that's what I want to say. I hope that you can see that I've made good on my promise today. Truly, if you were to do nothing else other than just what I've laid out here today, this could be sufficient. Honestly, anybody who watches this, who has gotten to this point, you can succeed. There is no doubt. Anybody who's made it to this point, you have already been selected for this. I mean, nobody else could watch to this point. Nobody else could stick around to this point. But the fact that you're here means that you can succeed. Just apply it and report back to me and tell me if I'm wrong. You call me out a year from now. If you say you only cut down the suffering by a quarter and not half, fine, let me know. But I want you to get the results, so apply it. For those who will watch this on YouTube, I already suggested a moment ago that you sign up and get the ebook that I offer. I'm going to recommend it again now. You can go to joylott.com, get the ebook. It covers these three principles plus two more. It's a really important read. It's worth going over. And you can use it in conjunction with the talk today. So I really recommend reviewing the recording of this talk today and rereading that book. You don't need to do it every day, but if you were to review a little bit each day, or at least a little bit every week, you would definitely get more and more insights, because as your level of consciousness changes, you're able to recognize things that you weren't able to recognize previously. As you free yourself of all of the old clutter of the old beliefs, the old limitations, the old ways of perceiving things, then you can actually start to recognize things that were always there, but you just couldn't see them before. So there's a real value in reviewing the material repeatedly. So do that. Also, if I might as well say it, join some of my programs, because getting the support is enormously beneficial as well. Because if you mix and match, it can work, but it's unlikely to work, to be honest. If you're mixing and matching from this and that, you pick up a little bit from this book and a little bit from that YouTube and a little bit from this workshop, and you try to put them all together, the chances of that working for you are not so great. So if everything that I've shared with you is something that you have a yes to, I really think that getting support in an ongoing way could be the difference between you getting quicker success or it taking a long time of continuing to seek. So sign up for the ebook. Once you've done that, then we can be in better communication, and I can let you know about opportunities for ongoing support as well. So for everybody who's here live, we'll stay on for the group coaching. And for those who will be watching this on YouTube, bye for now. Take care.